Welcome back to episode 48 of the Rugby Paper Podcast. Another fascinating week in international rugby, as there's another twist in the Eddie Jones tale as he rejoins his native Australia to lead them to the 2023 World Cup. I'm rejoined by Nick Cain and Brendan Gallagher to discuss that and the England squad, and Sail Shark Gus Warr drops in to discuss all things Champions Cup. Right, it's Monday morning. We've woken up to a couple of bits of news on the international landscape. We've got Gus Warr from Sail Sharks dropping in halfway through the episode. So we'll hear about his Champions Cup related thoughts then. But yeah, the international game is full of twists and turns. And the latest in the saga is that guess who's back? Our man, Eddie Jones. He's retaken hold of the reins in his native Australia. We kind of expected it post 2023. Brendan, on a scale of 1 to 10, how surprised were you?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I wasn't surprised as such because Eddie is a headline writer and I knew something was brewing. I wasn't quite sure what. There were elements of it that did surprise me. I'm surprised the RFU didn't have him on some sort of gardening leave contract and they'd left that door open. I suspect that was financial, to be absolutely honest, because otherwise they'd have to pay him the full year's contract that was owing. Might be wrong on that, but that's my theory on that. I'm surprised in one way in that I've said this before on this podcast. I think Australia are going to be a bloody good team. They came up here with a second team in the autumn and were running on empty after a long season and should have beaten France, could have beaten Ireland, could have won all 5 matches, actually. I think Dave Rennie was in very difficult circumstances, was doing a good job. And I think they were going to challenge anyway for the World Cup. So, you know, they were coming in under the radar, and now you've got Eddie in charge, and they won't be under the radar at all. Having said that, he is a really good basic coach, Eddie, and you often get the impression with him that he's at his best in the first year, 18 months, dynamic period when he takes over with something to prove. Could be a masterstroke, but I think Australia were doing okay anyway. That's my overall take.
Nick, I'm guessing you have some thoughts on that compete clause, and by that I mean the fact that Jones can be sacked by the RFU and go to a competitor, not just that, but someone obviously on England's side of the draw as well.
I do. I find it astonishing, really. And I also, in a way, he's a free agent, but I just find it astonishing that the RFU hasn't protected itself to a degree, because he goes in obviously with an absolutely, you couldn't have more of an inside track. He's hugging the bloody corner. You know, he knows everything that there is to know about, all of England's key players. I don't know, he probably knows an awful lot about Steve Borthwick and how he will go about things. So in terms of inside information, inside track, it's advantage Australia. They're in the same half of the draw as England. I've heard rumours, and they're only rumours at the moment, that Jones got a substantial payoff, not a small one. Bill Sweeney has said that, Jones got whatever a standard contract payment is. Well, who knows what a standard contract payment is, but the word is that it was pretty substantial. So the RFU's books, when it comes to what they've spent on the coaching staff, will be pretty carefully analysed. It'll obviously be water under the bridge by that stage, but perhaps not if Australia knock England out of the 2023 World Cup. So all these things to come round. I mean, I see that Tim Horan, one of Australia's greats, has already called it a risk. I know certainly from a lot of, just Australian friends of my own, that Jones is not flavour of the month. He may be Hamish McLennan's, who's the Australian CEO, but I think that the Australian rugby public as a whole will be very much divided on his appointment. And as Brandon says, his reputation is that he makes a hell of a difference at the beginning. But I just wonder whether his experience with England was a tough one for him. His last 3 years were okay. So they cleaned up they didn't clean up, but they won the pandemic championship, if you like, which was truncated, and they didn't win it in style. And his last 2 years were pretty grim. So he's not going into it on the crest of a wave, that's for certain.
But he's going into it with something to prove, and that maybe makes him dangerous. You could very much see him sort of coming into camp and cooking up a storm in the way he did post World Cup.
Yeah, I think he's the sort of bloke who's always got something to prove. I just think that's the way he's made. I mean, he'll want to take Australia, back to the top. He's not won a World Cup, and that's the biggest, not blemish, but that's the biggest sort of miss on his coaching resume so far. So he'll be highly motivated of that.
And put it this way, Nick, it could work out for 2023, but if it doesn't, I don't think there's any chance of Australia winning 2027. I think 5 years of Eddie Jones would kill Australia off. It could work. It could work this time around. I still think, as I said, that it was going in the right direction for them, strangely enough, under Rennie. But it might yet be a masterstroke. But 12 months would be enough. I'm amazed he's got a 5-year contract out of it.
Yeah, me too. And I think that Rennie has been hard done to. I think
absolutely.
That he was. I mean, there were things where I really disagreed with what he did. He saw what Skelton could do in the European Cup final, and somehow they brought him in for a couple of games when they lost by France by a couple of points and should have beaten them this autumn. With Skelton playing, they brought him in another game. They came very, very close again. And I just thought, well, why isn't this guy embedded already? And you look at a guy like Miafu, it's not Eddie Jones's fault, but you look at the number of their players who are now being sort of cherry picked. You've got Matt Hansen playing for Ireland and so on and so forth. So, they're losing players. Mind you, so are England to Scotland.
Do you think that this is an Eddie Jones appointment specifically, or do you think this is a Dave Rennie sacking? I guess the timing is odd in that Pivac and Jones were both sacked, 2 months
I think it's definitely an Eddie Jones appointment. And Nick's absolutely right that there's quite a large lobby against Eddie, but there's also a large lobby for him, and a feeling that you can see a CEO will be thinking, well, I've got a chance to sign him here. What happens if I don't, and we don't produce in the next 12 months, and Eddie goes to whoever, another side, and does well? But it's still a bit odd. Nonetheless, it's still a bit odd. I don't think there was any need for such a huge signing. It's a gamble, and we'll see how it comes out.
Just going back to the 5-year contract, do you think this is Jones himself? We know he's a negotiator with that sort of a thing. He was on a lucrative contract with England. The RFU got a big payout. Do you think he said
the most lucrative of all time?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Let's not forget, this is the best paid coach in the world.
Exactly. But do you think this is him saying, look, I'll come and join you guys if you give me a Lions series?
Yeah, I do. I think that is
totally it. That's
absolutely what will have happened. He will have. Yeah, it's too. I mean, it's a great opportunity for him, and he'll argue that he's taking a hospital pass for this World Cup, and that he needs the 4 years and the Lions tour sort of midway through the next 4 years to get it all right, and they've bought into it. So we'll see what happens. I think the last Eddie Jones stint lasted, was it 5 years, Bren?
What, with Australia?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was about another 18 months after the World Cup, wasn't it, before it all went pear-shaped. So he would have been... No, actually, he wasn't there in 2001, was he? Because Rob McQueen was the coach for the Lions. So
2002 through to
about 2005, I think it was, yeah.
Wasn't it? Wasn't it? Years. I thought it was 01. Maybe it was end of 01.
Must have been end of 01, because it's Rob McQueen was the coach of the team that beat the Lions 2-1.
Yeah, and was he with South Africa for the Lions series, or had he left by then? I think he was just there for the World Cup.
He was just there for the World Cup, and
so he's never had a Lions series of any sort.
It's sort of almost become as if he was the key factor in South Africa winning the 2007.
He most certainly wasn't.
I'm afraid that the key factor in it was the bloke who was the head coach, which was Jake White, and obviously a group of very experienced players and very good players. So, Eddie was the consultant.
I am mystified, by the way, as I thought Australian Rugby Union was meant to be in financial peril. So the next the 5-year contract for Eddie is not going to come cheap. So perhaps there's been slight exaggeration of their financial dire straits.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, regardless, we've got the potential narrative of a Steve Borthwick, Eddie Jones head-to-head, a
It's very
reuniting of,
good. It's
which
very
is
good.
obviously fantastic. And yeah, should Scott Robertson come in for Ian Foster, who knows what's going to happen in the next couple of months, then I feel like the sort of clean sweep is complete of every team that's had its own existential crisis over the last year or two. Well, the international landscape seems to be changing week on week at the moment, and obviously the landscape for the 2023 World Cup as well. But we can't forget that there's a European or semi-European competition going on at the moment. We're just off the back of a hell of a weekend for European rugby, and it's time for our special guest to join us for today, who is Gus Warr from Sale. How are you, Gus?
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm really good, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You just finished training for today. That's pretty soon after Toulouse.
Yeah, we came in. It was only walkthroughs today. Bit of prep for Ulster, bit of review from Toulouse, and then just trying to get right for the next weekend.
So, what's been said in the Toulouse review then?
It wasn't the best of us. We could have done a lot of things better. Probably moved the ball a bit better in attack. They were very good at the breakdown. You have to give them that. But our clearers probably weren't there urgent enough. So just needed to focus a bit more on that on attack. Defensively, just the effort and the intent was there. Just by the end, 14 men against probably a world-class side. It's hard to keep them out for that long.
Early-ish days in your Sale career, you went toe-to-toe with the best nine and for many the best player in the world at the moment. How was that in the lead up to it?
It's pretty exciting, isn't it? He's, as you said, he's probably the best player in the world at the moment. He's in form. Having played them at their place about 3 weeks ago, we saw how good he was, scoring 2 tries, all the line breaks, how he controlled the game. So to be able to go up against him, it's pretty special. Yeah, apart from the fact he doesn't offer a lot of chat. That's the only thing.
No, he doesn't,
but he wasn't responding to it. So I was just like,
Did you give him any chat? I know he was silent.
I was just trying to tell him how good he was. Like, he's the best. I was just kept telling him how good he was.
I like that reverse psychology. Nice. Which scrum halves have you played against that have offered a lot of chat?
Danny Kerr offered a bit the other week against Quins. JVP gives it a little bit. Yeah, they're the ones I can remember most. So yeah, it's pretty good fun. It's better when they give it a bit of chat. Makes it a bit more fun.
Who gives better chat out of you and Rafi?
Oh, 100% me. 100% me. Yeah.
You giving him tips?
Chat tips.
Now, I did notice, I mean, the commentators alluded to it as well, that you know, in the first half especially, were charging around quite a lot. Was the blood pumping that little bit more against a side like Toulouse, Champions Cup, Antoine Dupont? Just that little bit of extra oomph?
I don't know if it was extra oomph, or I just found myself in those spaces. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't out there trying to be more physical. If you looked at my shape and the size of me, I'm not a physical 9. But I was just trying to do all the right things and help the team as much as we could.
After the first driving maul try, obviously it seemed to be shaping up quite well. Was there a feeling of we can win this thing?
Yeah, definitely. We had real clear messages. We felt like we were controlling the first half quite well. The scoreboard didn't probably reflect the pressure we had in the first half. But it was just as the game went on, we lost momentum, lost control. They, to be fair, executed a real good game plan on game management. And when Jaminet kicks as well as he did from pretty much everywhere on the pitch, it's pretty hard when he's keeping the scoreboard ticking over. Obviously, there was a red card.
Did you feel a little bit aggrieved by that red card as a team?
No, I don't think we did. We came in at half time. We spoke. We don't feel sorry for ourselves. Like, it's gone. It happens. We're just going to park it, move on, and focus on doing our job the best we can. Whatever's next, just keep doing next job, stay in the moment. And to be fair, we've had quite a lot of experience playing with 14 men, so we had a pretty good plan on how we were going to go about it.
Well, as did many clubs in Europe this weekend, especially, to be fair. Nick, did you think it was a red?
Yes, I did. I think that, but I think it's increasingly difficult. You know, the ruck's a mess. You've got people who are going into guard positions, basically horizontal to the ground. And although they might not be using their arms to seal off, they're sealing off in every way. But for Visser to have got underneath him, he would have had to have been a mole. You know, it's what's wrong with the ruck. You know, the main principle at the ruck previously, talking about years gone by, was stay on your feet. Got to be on your feet. I'd say that you've got to have your head and shoulders above your knees as well. But The problem with it is that you've also got to educate players, and that process is going on at the moment, and it's a pretty painful one, and it seems to be taking a long time to get through. That if you're in danger of making a headshot, don't make it.
We've had this debate a few times about whether, jackling is the problem, and that's kind of exactly it. Is how would Visa have got under? I can't remember who the Toulouse player was now. Actually,
it's not so much jackling, Ollie. It's the fact that the thing is static. There's you get counter rucks sometimes, but it's a pile up effectively. What you've got is people in static positions and other people coming into it, joining it in the hope of making it dynamic in some way, and the lawyers totally militate against that.
Gus, as a 9, what do you make of it all? Obviously, you've got the front seat for much of it.
Yeah, personally, I try and stay away from any jackal positions. I'm not, I'm not one for being belted when I've got my head down. It depends how it's officiated. You want to keep the game flowing, and we'd probably say every ruck there could probably be a penalty given. So it's what we're actually officiating and what's going on in the independent rucks. Again, I'm not sure how Kobus could have got much lower to clear somebody out at the weekend. But yeah, I think it just depends. And it's got to be on attack and ball carriers. Ball carriers have got to make more of an effort, I think, to get the ball off the chest, get it away from potential jacklers, and then win the race. Ball off your chest and win the race. I think it's as simple as that, to stop having any dangerous head contacts or making it such a mess.
I think Gus is dead right there, because it strikes me now, the way it's reffed, once the jackal is in position and got it, you might as well blow the whistle there and give it to them, because you're not going to get them off. The only way you can get it off them is by foul play. And that's not, so whatever happens, once the jackal secured the ball, that team is going to have the ball. So the trick is to win the race, as you say, to get it before it gets into that position. You've got to have maybe a couple of quicker guys in the pack, a couple of guys who that is their speciality, and get them all there. Like hookers also nowadays, as well as the 7s, really good mobile guys to get to the breakdown first. You might need more players capable of doing that, I think. Maybe. Once Jackal's got it, it's over. It's over.
Brent, what a lottery. You look at the Quins game, for example, and they had 2 would-be jacklers. This is right at the death. They had 2 would-be jacklers over the ball, seemingly in absolutely, technically correct positions and so on and so forth. They get a penalty given against them, and it's the winning kick. And previously, another one was given to Racing, where Benarous was clearly in at the side. One of his hands was on the ground, and the other one he was reefing the ball. And again, he gets a penalty. It's so bloody. It's such a mess. It's very inconsistent.
Yeah, it is very inconsistent. I'll grant you that. 90% of the time, the refs favour the jackal all the time. But when you get that ref who doesn't, or isn't just, then it blows the game apart. You don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
Do you think it's time for a statement? If we take the Visa example specifically, like Gus said, I'm not sure you could get much lower than that. Do you think it's time for a World Rugby type statement, or just some clarification in terms of, in that situation, how you clear someone out with force if a neck roll is no longer allowed, and obviously to avoid, any head, shoulder, neck contact?
Well, some clarification would be worthwhile. Obviously the European Cup is where we've seen most of the incidents, but they go on, they're going on continuously in every competition, I'd say. Yeah, you do probably need some clarification on it, but, they'll probably throw the ball back in the players' court and say, what you have to do is make sure that you're not going to make a headshot, and that if in doubt, leave it out. Don't do it. But then you get to the question of, is this meant to be an area of competition, or is it meant to be a play the ball? It's your ball. It's a freebie.
Oh, there you have it. That's my point. If it's ref like that, the jackal goes down. That's it. There's no competition with the ball from that moment onwards.
So, clarification, definitely, but it's been a problem. The thing about it is, Ollie, is that, this is a concentric wheel, we keep on going round and round and round.
Yeah, well, exactly. And we keep doing that on this podcast. So for that reason, I'm going to move away from that topic. I'm going to come to a certain Emmanuel Meafu, who, sat down Manu Tuolangi. And I'm just going to ask Gus, has Manu ever been sat down in a Sale shirt from what you've seen?
No, I think his reaction was brilliant. He got up and just started laughing to himself. Like Manu, but he couldn't hit him. And then just got up and started laughing.
I can think of, and this is maybe a little test for all of you actually, I can think of one person who's successfully bumped Manu in his entire career.
I think I've seen Billy Vunipola do it. Would that be the one?
Okay, no, not the one I'm thinking of. Maybe.
Yeah.
Prime Julian Surveyor, the year Manu actually dismantled the All Blacks in the
Yeah.
second half, he bumped him in the first half, but not to the extent that Meafu did.
What occurs to me is he's an Aussie. The French have stolen him, but if the Aussies had Skelton and Meafu as their locking partnership,
God.
I mean, he's twice the size of Manu.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy is a man mounted. He'd probably weigh a third as much again as Manu.
145 kgs officially.
That's a 300 kilo second row. Him and Skelton, which is just absolutely nuts. Gus, did you have to tackle him?
Thankfully not, no. If I did, I think it would have been go low and hope.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Speed bump technique.
I tell you what, I noticed that your technique was pretty good. You managed to lasso Dupont a couple of times, didn't you?
Yeah, that was pretty fun. Yeah, almost let him go and then tackle him from the side instead of trying to get an arm wrestle with him.
You can't let him go too far, though, can you?
No, he's a bit quicker than he.
Just on the Dupont thing again, and this is the last time I'll come back to him, but you said yourself that you're not necessarily the big, burly, powerful nine. I think Dupont probably does have a little bit of that game to him. How did you prep for that duel personally in terms of, watching out for, him trying to run through you as well as around you?
It was more just system stuff. Stick to what we do around the ruck. If he jumps, almost just like take a step towards him, put pressure on him, but don't lunge at him. Make sure he stays a system, stay connected. And then if he does show and go or something like that, then it's an opportunity to light him up.
Right, we'll come to the format of the Champions Cup in a little bit. But Gus, if it's okay with you, let's do your random rugby 15 now.
Yeah, let's go.
Sweet. Nickname?
It's Guzila or Gus Bus.
Guzila?
Yeah, it's just, I don't know where it's come from, but in the last year, not an S, it's a Z as well.
Yeah, I can hear. Sounds like someone just making noises, really.
Yeah.
Best rugby memory?
Debut for sale at 18 away at Quins.
Most embarrassing rugby memory?
Scottish School Cup final. We were winning. I asked the referee if it was final play. He said, yeah, I kicked it out early. There was 3 seconds left on the clock. They scored from a driving ball. So, yeah.
No. But you asked the rep?
I know. I know. I've argued that point as well.
Oh, my God. Oh, the refs royally stitched you up there. Where did you kick it out? On your own 5 meter?
On our own 5.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Really good. Pre-game tune?
It's ABBA or Sam Fender, something chilled.
Post-game meal?
We had Domino's after the game on Saturday, so that was pretty good. That went down very well.
I always get Domino's craving after I play. It's not good. Best player you've played against?
I'll have to go with Dupont, won't I?
Yeah, I was going to say, did he live up to the sort of it's folklore by this point in a way, but he did.
Yeah.
Best player you've played with?
Probably Manuel Curry.
Favorite player right now?
I was joking. I got, when you sent them through earlier, Will Cliff, 100% Will Cliff.
Rugby idol?
Wilkinson.
Favorite stadium?
I don't know what it's called, but La Rochelle away. That's a pretty special atmosphere to play there.
Guys, what's it called?
Oh, it's after some war hero, isn't it? It always is down there. But yeah, it's a fantastic place.
Isn't it Marcel de Flandre? Is it something like that?
Yes, it's exactly that. Wow. 1-0 Nick Cain. Very good.
There you go.
You're looking down. Have you got it scribbled down on your piece of paper?
Yeah, I've got the old Heineken Cup handbook just by me.
I'm not accepting that then. That's
Favorite gym exercise?
Mobility.
Really? Okay, interesting. We haven't had anyone say mobility. Favorite mobility exercise then, because that's quite like a broad.
The old-fashioned hip flexor stretch. Yeah, just
one knee and thrust.
Yeah.
Nice. Occupation if rugby didn't exist.
The boys were joking around saying I'd be a teacher, so I'll listen to what they're saying and go with that.
What would you teach?
History or PE.
Superstitions?
Don't have any.
Rugby law you would change?
Something to do around citing, or red or yellow cards, maybe like an orange card, so it's 10 minutes in the bin, and then you can bring a replacement on, or like a white card, so you can report something in the game that can be looked at later.
Okay, interesting. And lastly, best thing about working in rugby?
It's being with the boys, 100%. Being in with all your mates all the time.
Thought you'd say that. Right, that was very quick fire. Nice one. Let's get back to the Champions Cup now. Brendan, I'm actually going to come to you first about this, and I'm just going to introduce the format question and ask what your utopian vision of the Champions Cup would be.
Well, I think it was probably the old, pools of 4, 6 matches in the pool. You had the, the top two went through, didn't it? Then you had the 2 best third place, quarterfinal, semi-final, final. It just, now, and there are reasons. It was COVID that forced initially this sort of rejig, and it just seemed a bit illogical, and you're not quite sure why the teams are where they are, why they're playing different teams, but they're in the same league. So, it's not like. It just seems a bit of a mess. And you've got the round of 16. Funnily enough, I did like it. Was it last year or 2 years ago? The round of 16 was double-legged. And that I liked. So, what they had was nigh on perfect, I thought. I don't know why they fiddled with it other than the COVID reason. I think they ought to get back to it. But listen, Europe is Europe. There were some good matches this weekend. Not all of them, but there were some good ones. And it will hot up. It will hot up once you get round of 16, quarterfinals. It will be like the Europe that me and Nick sort of pine for and remember. But it's just a bit of a mess at the moment, this pool stage.
Gus, the whole debate from a player welfare perspective is obviously the number of games and the amount of time. And the general view is with this format, the number of games has gone up in less time. We're, I think, 3 years into this format now. As a player, do you feel that intensity increasing? I know you've not necessarily been in the thick of it, a couple of years ago, but certainly now, does it feel like quite a lot?
I'm not sure. I think I've got a whole different view on the player welfare. I think there's a lot being said about it, and boys want to play. So yeah, there's a lot of games going on, but people want to play rugby. Like, it's the best thing to do. It's our job. We love doing it. So I think that's part of it. But it is quite intense, yeah. But it's just like the next level up from the Premiership. So I think that's probably why it's more intense. It's an international competition playing against the best teams in the world. So as in player welfare, I'm not really sure. I can't really comment because I didn't play before on it. But yeah, intensity-wise, it's just because the teams are better.
Have you spoken to some of the other guys? I appreciate that you'll all want to play rugby, but maybe a front rower would think they can only give 60 minutes against Toulouse, once a month or something like that, and not be able to, empty the tank in the same way. Have you spoken to guys in camp who maybe do feel that it's a bit much?
I think Bevan and Harper felt it on Saturday when they played 80 minutes after the first contact. But I haven't really addressed that issue. I don't really get too much involved in it. Just focus on getting fit for the weekend and playing.
I don't like the format as it is at the moment at all. I think that it's actually become, this was meant to be, it was called the Champions League. This is meant to be the top teams in each league. It's now gone down to the 8th team in each league. And you can see in the non-competitiveness of some of the fixtures. I mean, I suppose the big low light, if you like, was Gloucester taking a second team to Leinster, but also getting absolutely smashed at home this last weekend. It's not as competitive as it ought to be. And I think that is, you're just beginning to notice that not all the games are, they're not all full. And you can't have, cricket scores or basketball scores in a Champions Cup. It doesn't sit well. It's not right.
The other thing that I think ties into that slightly is it's now possible to make the quarterfinals and potentially semi-finals whilst only winning like 3 group stage games or 2 group stage games. You look at Montpellier versus Quins last year, and I want to say Quins won 5 and Montpellier won 2, but don't put me on the record for that. It was something like that.
Yeah.
And then obviously Montpellier were the better team across 2 legs, fine. But it was a Marcus Smith conversion that was pushed to the right that was the difference between Quins going through and Montpellier not. Who had been the better team over the course of the Champions Cup? It had been Harlequins.
Now, there's some anomalies there. Actually, I might have this wrong, but didn't Sale benefit from that? Was it last season? They got through on a was it 1 win or 2 wins? But yeah,
that's potentially going to happen this season as well. Sale have got a hell of a game, coming up against Ulster. I mean, how do you feel? How do you feel about that one, Gus? It's a pretty difficult place to go to, Ravenhill, isn't it?
Yeah. Growing up watching TV, all the Ulster Friday night games it looks like quite an atmosphere. Quite excited to play there, but we're well aware of the challenge. It's almost a playoff between us and Ulster to see who goes through.
Yeah, if you win that, I think you're in good shape.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got to go there and win. We can't go there and hope for a result in any other games. So yeah, we're well aware of the atmosphere and what's coming, especially with how we went early in the year against them. They're going to be wanting some revenge. So it's going to be, yeah.
Do you feel that home advantage in the Heineken Cup in particular really counts for a hell of a lot? Difficult to go away and win.
Yeah, I think so. Especially like going to Toulouse, it's a completely different atmosphere to what you face in the Premiership. That was an experience in itself. The walk in, they've got DJs playing. It's a full tunnel, lights, everything, and then you get out there and you can barely hear your teammates on the pitch. We prepped for it as well. We had speakers all the way through training with music playing real loud, so we couldn't hear each other whilst we were training in the week to try and prepare for it. But you get over there and it's just a completely different experience again.
Are you treating this as a final then, effectively?
I wouldn't say a final. It's more just us focusing on what we do well, being the best of us again, and just preparing that it's going to be a physical, tough game. And we just need to make sure we nail everything we can. And that should hopefully put us in good stead.
Before we let you go then, I want a score prediction. It's Saturday, isn't it, the game?
Yes.
Could I get a score prediction from you, please?
I think it'll be tight. 19-12 to us.
Okay. So comfortable enough, not quite a nail biter. Okay, well, obviously, yeah, if you do win, like Nick said, or Brendan said, I can't remember who, you're in a pretty good position to qualify. So all the best for that, Gus. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Actually, before we let Gus go,
sorry.
can you just tell us, I've always been intrigued by the Dollar Academy connection there, Gus. I think you got 2 Scottish finals there, didn't you? How did you end up in Scotland? And are you the same era that was playing against Zach Mercer when he was at Merchiston?
No, I'm not. I'm 3 years younger than Zach Mercer.
Oh, right, Zach's a bit older, yeah.
Yeah, so it came through. I was doing my brother was doing Scottish Exiles because we're Scottish qualified through our mum, and Dollar wanted to create this scholarship to bring a boy who's not within the Scottish system into the Scottish system who's Scottish qualified from England. Okay. So they got in contact with Don Caskey, the director of rugby up there, got in contact with whoever was running the Scottish Exiles programme, and my brother went up and he loved his 2 years up there. So yeah, I pretty much followed. I'm 2 years below him, so he played 9 for 2 years up there, and then I left. I joined the year he left, so now I played 9 for 2 years up there. So yeah, that's how it came.
Who's your brother play for now? Is he a decent player still?
He's all right. Yeah, he stopped playing to follow an actual career. He was playing in the Super Six for Ayrshire Bulls a couple of years. We won, and before that, he was playing for Ayr before the Super Six was founded. So he's played quite a bit of rugby up there.
And if your career path continues as it has, and certainly in the last 3 or 4 months, do you hope to have the choice between England or Scotland at some stage?
yeah. Probably prefer. I don't know. Yeah,
you don't have to put it on the line. Obviously, you are qualified. So should you continue, that question might be posed at some stage.
Yeah, I'd love to if it ever came.
I'm not going to press you for which you'd pick, but do you have an answer in your head of which you'd pick?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll leave that to the imagination then. Gus, good luck against Ulster. Certainly looking forward to it. Should be a cracker of a match. And yeah, it's been great to see your career go so well in the past few months, and long may that continue.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers, Maestro. Go well.
Bye. Let's get back to international matters now that Gus is gone. The England squad has been released by Steve Borthwick this morning. My feelings, and I said this to you both off air, my feelings were indifference, which I think equates to disappointment. I know we weren't expecting wholesale change, but there are certainly some names, many of whom we mentioned last week when we picked a team for the start of the Six Nations, that aren't even in the equation because they didn't make the squad. So I'm going to come to you both. I'll come to Nick first. The biggest surprise, and I think you're looking at the front row probably for yours.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it looks to me in many, many parts, there are 5 newcomers overall, but it's Eddie Jones continued in many regards in terms of selection. I cannot see, I mean, what Steve Borthwick's clearly saying through this Six Nations squad selection is that he believes that it was coaching at the top end that was at fault in terms of England's scrum problems, and that they are problems that can be fixed through coaching and are not a problem specifically with the personnel. Now, I find that quite difficult because of the way that they were overwhelmed during the autumn. And just looking yesterday, there's a statement in there about these are players that are in form and so on and so forth. Well, if you looked at the Racing Harlequins game in Paris, the whole of the Harlequins comeback was predicated on a really outstanding performance at Loosehead by Joe Marler, whose scrummaging really provided the platform for them to get back into the game. And I believe he's said that he's interested in playing for England again. I cannot believe that he's out of it. I cannot believe, even though Leinster gave Gloucester another dusting, that Rapava Ruskin, who was about the only Gloucester player who put his hand up in that game, is out of the equation either. And that, Bevan Rodd, who's a very good footballer, I've got no issues, and he's improving as a scrummager too, but he's a very young guy, and he's got ground that he needs to, get properly prepared before he's ready fully at test level. And you've got a guy like Rapava Ruskin, who somehow, despite having played out of his skin for 2 seasons, doesn't get a register. Marler's known as, he'd be the best scrummaging loosehead, not just in the UK, or one of the best in Europe and definitely in the world. So I don't quite understand that. I think Kyle Sinclair is extraordinarily lucky to still be in the squad. I think that there are certain players who just seem to get, it's almost like there's a monopoly on prop selection for certain players. And I feel that, that there are guys who deserve at least to be in the squad and to be pressing their case in the squad. Dan Cole coming back in, I understand, but I do think that they're going to need to really find another tight head and quickly. But we'll see. It's interesting because the first 3 games, England have got there's a progression. If you look in the Six Nations, they've got Scotland first, they've got Italy second, they got Wales third. Now, none of those sides they're good, but they're not exceptional scrummaging sides. The Italians would probably offer a problem. Scotland might. Wales in a real state of flux. But then they'll come into the last 2 games against France and Ireland, and those will be massive scrummaging tests for them. So we'll see. It doesn't feel quite right to rain on somebody's parade when they come out with the first squad, but I have to say that it was lacking a lot to sort of get you excited.
Yeah, I don't want to rain on the parade either, but I think we need to make it clear that this is certainly not a revolutionary squad. And the headlines say, just looking at the BBC now, Vunipola out, Jack Knoll out, Johnny May out. But actually what they don't sort of zoom in on is, Mako Vunipola is still there, Carl Sinclair's still there, Owen Farrell's still captain, those sorts of things to show that actually people have spoken about
this conservative.
It's very
selection, isn't it, Ollie? It's a pretty conservative. Listen, everybody starts equal at the start of the Six Nations. That might be, the quality of Borthwick's coaching and his team and building momentum. That is what can get England back up quite quickly. Doesn't have to take long, but it is a pretty conservative selection. I quite liked George McGuigan coming in. I've always rated him and wondered why he wasn't mentioned in dispatches. Jack Walker, a couple of Harlequins put their hands up yesterday, and which I thought was one of the better European matches. It started slowly, but second half it had that real authentic madcap European Heineken feel to it, that match. I really loved the second half. Marcus Smith had an absolute belting game for a bloke who hadn't played for 10 weeks. And Nick's absolutely right. Joe Marler, when he stops the gab and when he concentrates on rugby, he's a hell of a prop and a hell of a player. So that was interesting. I thought Jack Walker played pretty well. I wasn't surprised that he sneaked in. It still worries me a bit in the backs that it's this obsession with the all-rounders. You've got Elliot Daly, fullback, wing, centre. Tommy Freeman, wing or fullback. Dan Kelly, specialist 12. I'm not quite sure if he's quite ready yet. Obviously, Borthwick will have seen a lot of him, but I'm not sure he's any better than some of the other contenders there. Max Malins, fullback, wing. I've seen somebody even mention he should play 10. Joe Merchant, wing, centre sometimes. Henry Slade, 13, 12. Where are the specialists? Where are the absolute specialists that England build the back division on? He might well have exactly nailed down in his mind where he wants these people to play or on the bench. But at the moment, it's not exactly clear to me. And then you got 3 10s have been named. So is he intending to use Finn Smith in some way? Does he really think he's absolutely ready to come in if there are injuries? Or is he just there as a quasi-apprentice player?
Yeah,
which we hope he's not. I did also wonder that, I don't know why, but my gut feeling when I looked at that was actually, is he still thinking of Farrell at 12 and Smith at 10? And therefore he wants a similar backup to Smith at 10, i.e. Finn Smith. I don't know. It was a slightly confused there, but he might have the big picture. We don't know what's in Steve Borthwick's mind yet.
I think he did come out and say that he sees no reason why Smith and Farrell can't work.
Nick Evans said that.
It was Nick Evans, wasn't it?
Nick Evans at the weekend.
Yeah,
which I thought was a little bit of a clue.
I know. So there's obviously still an openness to it. I mean, I hate it when people say there's no reason why it can't work when it's happened already and it hasn't worked. Like, there are your reasons. So that's
it's like being caught in a loop. And I mean, obviously, if they do go to that 10-12 combination again, Steve Borthwick and Nick Evans think that they can do something that Eddie Jones obviously couldn't. I have to say that there's been obviously a huge amount of support for George Ford coming back into the side, but we're looking at the same in terms of the key tactical roles on the field. We're looking at the same players, who've been reasonably successful with England, but they haven't got it done when it comes to the really big prizes. And those players are, Ben Youngs is still in there. Owen Farrell is still in there. As a 10, it may be a different proposition, but as a 12, it hasn't managed to get it done. George Ford as a 10, 12 with Farrell hasn't managed to get it done. Okay, I can't remember. Did who started in the game against New Zealand in the semi-final? Was it Ford and Farrell?
It was both of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be the highlight, along with going back to the Six Nations Grand Slam. But you've got these are moments, but they don't persuade you that all of a sudden it's all going to come together. Given the time span that we've got, that it's all going to come together in such a way as England are going to be able to achieve what they haven't achieved so far.
So one name that I was a little bit surprised to see in there was Elliot Daly. I know he's in fantastic form, but like Brendan said, in terms of the specialist debate, I thought we kind of put that to bed. And I'm asking this to both of you as sort of a relative journalistic fetus, but in terms of how coaches operate, will Borthwick have finalised his squad before the weekend of games?
He's had so little time that I suspect he hadn't absolutely nailed it down. So I think there was room for outstanding performances at the weekend. And I know what you're going to say now, because Elliot Daly was brilliant.
Yeah.
He was actually brilliant at 13, which is the position he should have been playing in all his England career. As an 18-year-old at Wasps, he was a brilliant outside centre. And then he started getting messed around because he can play fullback and he can play wing. But if you play Elliot Daly at 13, it really changes the shape of what England want to do. Then do you have to play Manu at 12? And I don't think Manu's best at 12. I know Nick disagrees with me there. But then if you play him at 12, then you do have to have Farrell at 10. And then if you have Farrell at 10, you're not using the Marcus Smith weapon as much, perhaps. So it's a complicated thing. If you make one selection, it has a knock-on effect everywhere else.
When I look at Esterhazen for Harlequins, or Manu at his best, or any one of a number of really strong running, Dialende for South Africa and so on. The idea of a player who can get you over the gain line early is huge, I think, give you that momentum early on. And England overcomplicate. 12 and 13, look, as long as they're coming onto the ball in the right way and they're coming on with real venom and pace, that's what matters really. And so Tuilagi at 12 or 13, I don't really care that much, but it just seems to me that there are players that you can't put at 12 and a lot of them. So, when you've got a bloke that you can put at 12 and he can deliver in that shirt, then, that for me is probably what you need to do. England have got, now Daly comes into the equation. And he and Slade are, they're great competition for each other at 13, no question. But, where's the competition for Manu? He's not playing out of his skin. He's playing better than he was.
Didn't make a dent in either matches against Toulouse, which is slightly worrying, isn't it?
Kelly is, is a youngster who looks promising and is coming through, but he's still got a way to go. So, I see Porter's not in there at all, is he? Cockanasinger's not in there at all. Caden Murley has probably earned his chance. And maybe Hassel Collins has too. So maybe we'll see a certain amount. There are going to be injuries, and we'll see what happens around those. The McGuigan thing, he's played bloody well. I actually really like, and he was an Eddie Jones pick. I like Blameyer. I think he's a really
did nothing wrong, did he? Did nothing wrong.
Really, really good hooker, and he offers something in terms of athleticism that perhaps Jamie George, McGuigan, and Luke Cowan-Dickey don't, because he's very quick around the field. Jack Walker made a fantastic line-out take at the back of I can't remember what it was. It must have been a Racing throw, but I'm not sure that he's done quite enough to get himself into the squad, but he's there. So look, we'll see. Ribbons is out.
That was a surprise. I thought he'd be in.
He's out. Ezekwie's back in. So it's the coach's call. And really until the Scotland game, it's it's impressions, and there isn't the sort of dynamism and dynamic about the squad that we probably would have liked, but it's there. And
I would just reiterate that the England side that's so disappointed in the 2015 World Cup, all the same players were reborn months later. Won a Grand Slam, one in Australia. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the selection of players, new players per se, but I think that could help. It's just the whole approach now has to be different. It has to be better. It has to be more dynamic, and that has to come from the coaching staff first of all, and then the key players, the big players, have to buy into that, and that's going to be vital to look to see. And then, if you ever did get to look at their training sessions in the next 2 weeks. And that first match against Scotland, I think we'll be able to see instantly whether there's been a sort of, a change, a sea change. If not, it's the same old players. The thing that has to change is the tempo, the mental approach, the mental dynamic of it.
Yeah, I thought it might be quite interesting. We obviously picked our England starting team for Scotland last week, and it would be quite interesting to name the people that were in our starting team that aren't even in the Six Nations squad.
Go on then, this would be embarrassing.
Well, obviously, there is no disputing that the Rugby Paper podcast is the hub for all things correct in rugby union, and that's the squad it should have been for England, Scotland. That's what Nick Cain told me anyway. So we had Rapava Ruskin and or Nick Shonett. Neither of them made it. Dave Ribbons we had in, he hasn't made it. Anthony Watson made it in, he hasn't made it. His understudy was Joe Thokanasiga.
He's been declared injured though, hasn't he? I think he would have been in for injury. Anthony Watson.
Oh, has he? Oh, I didn't realise that. That's interesting. Okay, well, I did think the squad screamed of a little bit of Leicester bias, and then Watson was my caveat to that, but maybe the squad does scream of Leicester bias. And the biggest shock for me was Ollie Lawrence, and he is obviously nowhere to be seen. So if we pick that England team again now, it would obviously be very, very different. So, how's your credibility feeling right now, lads?
I'm happy with our team, actually.
Yeah, me too.
I'm unmoved.
And the wonderful thing is we will never be tested, whereas Steve Borthwick's selection will be tested first up against Scotland. So it's a win-win for us.
Well, that's exactly it. That's the beauty of being an armchair selector.
Yeah.
I think we'll wrap up there, guys. Obviously, the Champions Cup to look forward to this weekend. So a retrospective thank you again to Gus Warr for joining us and wishing him the best against Ulster. The two headlines from the international perspective, Eddie Jones of the England squad. Tying in with that, just before we finish, if there's an England versus Australia quarterfinal or semi-final tomorrow, Nick and Brendan, who wins it?
Oh, tomorrow, England win it just. In a year's time, who knows? Or in 8 months' time, who knows?
I'd say tomorrow, based on what we saw in the autumn, I'd say Australia just.
Okay, interesting. On a knife edge is essentially what we're saying. And like we say, we can only keep our fingers crossed that Borthwick Jones narrative does reach a climax come the end of the World Cup at the end of this year. But men, it's been great having you as always, and I will see you both next week.
Good stuff.
Good stuff, Master.
As always, the Rugby Paper is available in stores on Sundays or get it delivered to you through our digital subscription. Next week, a slight change of pace as we turn our attention to the Rugby Players Association. I'm joined by head of the RPA game line, Luke Cain, as well as former Northampton Saint and current RPA player liaison officer, Christian Day.